Okay, good Friday afternoon, good Erev Shabbos. Hope you're doing well, and hard to believe another week has passed. We're ready for Shabbos again, and looking forward to a great one ahead. I'm going to do a couple of short Rashis here on the sixth Aliyah in our Parsha of Vayigash. In the end of the previous Aliyah, we see actually the descent, finally, of Yaakov and the rest of the family to Mitzrayim, and the count of those who come, those who arrive in Mitzrayim. And then the Torah tells us at the beginning of our Aliyah, Ves Yehuda shalach lefanav el Yosef lahoros lefanav Goshna, vayavo arza Goshen. That before the rest of them arrived in Mitzrayim, Yaakov first sent Yehuda ahead of them in order lehoros lefanav Goshna, to Lahoros, the land of Goshen, and eventually they found their way to Goshen. We know Goshen, their dwelling there was an important piece of their arrival in Mitzrayim. They were shepherds. They had to specifically live in Goshen so they wouldn't encounter problems with the Egyptians, and the sheep were their gods and all of this stuff. So this was an appropriate arrival point for them. The question here is, what's Lahoros lefanav? So Lahoros comes from the word hora'ah, or instruction. So to instruct in front of him Goshen, and they came to Goshen. So Rashi says Lahoros lefanav. The plain meaning is ketargumo, like the way the Targum Onkelos translates this word. Lefanos lo makom, to clear the path, to clear the area for him. Lahoros hechis yashev ba, to teach him. Lahoros hora'ah, teaching, guidance, to guide Yaakov. Hechis yashev ba, how he would dwell there, where he would live, where he would set up his home, his town, his community. Where exactly in Goshen in relation to Mitzrayim. So Lahoros is the general understanding of what he would do to instruct Yaakov about how to set up a new life for himself in Mitzrayim, and Goshen in specific. And Lefanav is Kodem Shiagia Lasham. He sends him ahead of time to set up the infrastructure of that place. But Rashi says, Medrash Agada, a second meaning of Lahoros, which is very famous, very beautiful. Every year when I come back to this Rashi, this Chazal, it really strikes me. It's so powerful, even though it's so simple. Rashi says, based on the Medrash, Lahoros is not just to give guidance in a general sense about what it means to live in Goshen, but specifically Lahoros, to give instruction in our highest, most important form of instruction, and that is, of course, Torah. Lahoros lefanav, litakin lo beis Talmud, shemisham teitze hora. What he sent him for, Yehuda, he sent him ahead of time to set up a yeshiva, a base Talmud, a place of Torah study ahead of their arrival, so that from there, Teitzei Torah, from there, Torah and Hora, instruction in the highest form, could go out. Lahoros related to Hora, which is the same word as Torah. All of it is about instruction in the ways of our God. Of course, this is pre-Matan Torah. Whatever that meant in that time, to study Torah meant to study the values of the family and the things that they were anticipating eventually to be given in Matan Torah. But what it really explains to us, and what it really shows us, is the importance of setting up a strong Torah foundation, a strong Torah infrastructure in whatever place that we live. It was so important to Yaakov that he sent Yehuda ahead of time to be able to do this before their arrival, as if to say they couldn't live a moment in that place unless there was an already existent infrastructure of Torah for them to tap into. It's the basis, it's the foundation for any community. We may not do it exactly as Yaakov did. It may not be possible when you start up a new community, you move to a new place, to set up a yeshiva, a day school, a base medrash, even a shul. At the very beginning, sometimes people move in, then it comes later. It may not follow exactly this order, but the principle is certainly followed, and that is that the Torah infrastructure has to be the basis and the foundation for any community, so that from there, all else can spread and all else can grow. It's an important lesson for us, not just in setting up new communities, but in terms of priorities in general, and how we think about the way we set up life, and what's ikar and what's tafel, what's primary and what's secondary. And of course, the Torah should always be primary in terms of our focus, in terms of our attention, in terms of our investment, because it forms the foundation, not just of a community, but the rest of our lives as well. Beautiful Rashi, even though, as I said, very, very simple. We have time for one more Rashi, since it was a short one. And this is a Rashi from the very end of our Aliyah today, from the very end of the sixth Aliyah. After Yaakov and his family actually enter Mitzrayim, he's introduced to Paro. And if you'll notice, there's a very interesting frame to their entire introduction. It says, Vayavei Yosef es Yaakov aviv vayamidei lifnei Paro. Yosef brings his father Yaakov to meet his boss, to meet Paro. Vayivarach Yaakov es Paro. Yaakov blesses Paro. And then they have a little bit of an interaction, a back and forth. And then before they leave, Vayivarach Yaakov es Paro, vayetzem lifnei Paro. He blesses Paro and he leaves. So here it's Yamidel lifnei Paro. He comes before Paro in the entry, and Vayivarech. And here it's Vayetze lifnei Paro. He leaves and Vayivarech. So the frame is coming and leaving, but the inner sandwich, so to speak, right after the coming, right before the going, is Vayivarech, the blessing of Paro. Yaakov blesses Paro. Rashi says at the beginning, Vayivarech Paro, what blessing would he give them in the beginning? He she'ela shalom. Doesn't mean a bracha in the traditional sense that we understand it, but it's a greeting. It's a form of greeting that he would give. So Yaakov greeted Paro in that formal sense, kederach kol hanirim lifnei malachim leprakim. Like anyone who appears before royalty, you have to have the appropriate and proper and respectful greeting for them. So too, in the end, when he leaves, Vayivarech Yaakov, he gives him another bracha, not a bracha in the traditional sense, but kederach kol haniftarim milifnei sarim, like the blessing, the salutation that you would give to any person of nobility or of royalty or importance when you leave them. Mevarchim osam v'notlin rishus. You give them some kind of salutation, some kind of farewell, some kind of introduction, and then they bid you farewell, they allow you to leave. So, right, you have to almost be invited into their presence, and then you have to be given permission to leave. And the invited into their presence comes because of the bracha, the special salutation, the special greeting that you give them, and the permission to leave comes after you give them the proper salutation on the way out. So this idea of a greeting, this idea of the appropriate words to introduce the relationship and the interaction is really the framework of this entire story. That itself, I thought, is very, very interesting. We don't have the same kinds of formalities when we deal with other people. Most of us have not encountered royalty, but there are formalities, there are rules, how you greet, how you stand, how you shake, what you say. There are rules that govern that relationship, which gives the moment of the interaction a heightened sense of importance. The more structure, the more ritual, the more rules you have surrounding an interaction, the more it elevates the status of that interaction. For me, what this translates to very interestingly is not just a nice way to view this particular parsha and these psukim in terms of the framework over here and in terms of the association with royalty, but it really helps me to understand the nature of our tefillah, the way we interact with Hashem. Of course, we don't have the same kind of interaction with Hashem as we have with other human beings, even those of great royalty and nobility, but we do have that kind of relationship simulated when we speak to Hashem in tefillah. And that's why we have all those rules. We have Hashem Svatay Tiftach at the beginning. We have Iyu L'Ratzon at the end, in terms of the Shemona Esrei. What frames the Shemona Esrei? Our steps forward, our steps backward, the proper introductory salutation, the proper farewell salutation. All of these are integral to our experience of Shemona Esrei. Not just because we don't really have a right to go in unless we ask the right salutation or have the right words, but because the nature of the formality of that interaction, how we come in, how we go out, elevates the entire experience and makes it a different feel to it than our everyday interactions with other people as well. Hope you all have a great Shabbos, an enjoyable Shabbos, and a safe one ahead. Well,
thank you, Rabbi. You
take
too,
care,
Shabbos,
Too,
everybody.
Rabbi.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat
Thank you.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom.